Welcome to Studio 58A Live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook and Zoom. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online, wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your eyes. And like how we have your attention, do us a favor, no? Share this video with a friend or two or 5,000 so we can have a very lively discussion. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guest. Now, whether at home or in office, existing during this COVID-19 pandemic has placed many people under immense pressure, leading some, particularly frontline healthcare workers, to be impacted physically, mentally, and socially. For many persons, the restrictions on social and interpersonal activities caused by the pandemic has produced a lot of negative psychological effects, even mental breakdowns. Children have also experienced challenges as they have been trying to adapt to being kept out of school, away from friends and teachers. As a result, many people have come to realize that psychological support is just as important as the infection prevention and control measures being implemented to mitigate the spread of the virus. The goal for today's program is to share some tips to help persons address any mental health challenges that they may be facing at this time. And here to help us do so is counseling psychologist and psychosocial support volunteer with the Red Cross, Dr. Jason Wynter. Welcome, Dr. Wynter.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Good day, good night to whatever it is for your
wherever they are,
wherever they are.
All right, now, Dr. Wynter, one of the first things you can understand is like, I guess for many persons, they're not used to addressing mental health issues like this. So they probably wouldn't even know that they might be feeling off, or they might just be having some kind of problems as they adjust to this new normal caused by the COVID pandemic. So what are some of the ways in which they can come to realize that there might actually be a problem?
Look, it's important that persons, well, truth be told, I'm so delighted on one hand that there's a deeper appreciation for mental health, one's mental wellness in such a time like this with the COVID-19. And so people are taking the time out to say, whoa, there has been changes in my behavior. I am not the same as I used to be. And so people are becoming or sensing that I'm snapping a little bit more than normal. I'm raising my voice a little bit more than normal. I am becoming angry a little bit more than normal. And in other words, they are stressed or experiencing higher levels of stress compared to their normal behavior. And so COVID-19 has certainly caused us to take a deeper appreciation for mental health. Again, what do I do surrounding my own response? It's important for us to kind of set a basic motion in place. So we talk about stress, and especially with the COVID-19, it's how you respond to what is happening to you. So stress is your response to something in the environment. So again, on one hand, we say stressors, that's what is in the environment. Your stress is how you respond to the things. So you might feel that a whole series of emotions are going to be coming your place, coming across to you. And it's okay to feel that. It's okay to feel uncertain. It's okay to have that sense of fear and that nervousness. These changes are caused by the uncertainty surrounding the pandemic, and the feelings are normal. So if it is that, as again, that sense of fear, nervousness, unconscious, that you're experiencing, it's normal. And typically people bounce back after difficult times. So that's really where I want to kind of let individuals be reassured that there's a sense of bouncing back. We call that vulnerability. Resilience rather, resilience, the ability to bounce back. So understand what's happening. We'll talk about some of the other coping tips later on as we have this exchange today.
All right. Yeah. So, I'm just thinking that we have one of the biggest factors that is causing the stress is the fact that there's really no end in sight. So there's no finish line for many persons to appreciate, okay, the pandemic is going to end next week, and so on. So they might be existing in this state of limbo, if you understand what I mean. And so they don't quite know how to understand or process what they're doing. So where do they begin, to start going through that mental health checklist, to start processing what they're feeling and start taking necessary action to bring it under some kind of control?
You know, I'm happy you asked that. So then we have to look at, it's normal for people to have this type of feeling right now. The feeling of getting sick, yes, the feeling of boredom and isolation, and also worry of fear, worry that they may lose their income. So understand that it is normal to have that. So that's a first place to start, that, okay, I am worrying about the loss of my income. I'm fearful of being stigmatized or being labeled if I become sick with COVID-19, if others should know that I tested positive. So there's that fear, that stigmatization that may come with the individual. So acknowledging that to begin with is the first place you want to be real to your emotions, understand the various ones that are going to come. So in other words, what you'll find is that fear zone. So you're in that fear zone and you want to move from that fear zone to a learning zone. Okay, I know I might lose my job. I know I don't want to be labeled or stigmatized. I know I'm going to become bored or lonely. I can't go out. And especially what's happening in Jamaica and many parts of the world. Again, Jamaica is not unique to this, where there's a resurgence, there's a second wave, they call it. So we managed the first wave. We were doing well with our numbers. In the last 2 weeks or 3, there's a rise in the numbers. In New Zealand, similar case. Elsewhere in the States, hasn't gone down, just keeps going up. So you want to move from that fear zone to that learning zone, where you identify your emotions. You evaluate the information that is coming to you. So by now, you would have been able to manage a little bit more your social media. A lot of posting is coming in. We saw where Facebook limited the number of posts you can send to any number of people at any one time. And that's also a part of taking personal responsibility. We cannot overemphasize that. And that's one way you can put back the certainty in uncertainty, because the pandemic creates great uncertainty and people become shaky and nervous during this uncertainty. So we want to put back the certainty in uncertainty, if you know what I mean.
So, but Doc, when you say it like that, you almost make it sound so easy. You know what I mean? You make it sound like, you know what, all right, I'm just going to shift my mindset and that's going to be it. But for many people, it might not be so easy. You know what I mean? If, for example, you just got a message that, boy, your job is not necessarily secure, or they cut your hours, or they might not even keep you. You know what I mean? And then you're looking at your children and the whole adjustment that they have to make and so on. So it's like the question is, how do we begin to make that shift? What advice would you recommend to be able to say, okay, let me be able to make that mental perspective from the worry zone to the learning zone, as you just mentioned a while ago?
Definitely. A sense of gratitude does help. A sense of gratitude, optimism does help. So looking at your perspective. While some pills are going to be harder to digest than others, and I accept that, especially when it comes down to income, bills have to be paid, but a sense of life and gratitude is important, that you have not lost all. And for some too, a shift in where are my now new opportunities. Psychologists once had this word that was spelled Nowhere. So if you look at that word in one, it says nowhere. But if you separate that word, it says no here. So your perspective, you probably have to look around your house and do a retooling, an audit, I call it, to see what newness can I develop, what new talent, what new skill can I put forward, how can I put my hand to the wheel and generate possibly income or make use of your time so that you manage that worry or that fear state as you move, as I said, into the learning zone. And following from the learning zone is that growth zone. So we talk about make your talents available to those around you, reaching out to others as far as possible, especially with social distance protocols. So you must be individual responsible. You think of others, certainly. You thank and appreciate. So a sense of gratitude is going to be important. Look for a way to adapt to the new change. So you might need to reach out to someone. You can't do it all by yourself. Again, so you start, ultimately, we're moving from that fear to that learning and ultimately growth zone. It says there too that we must take care of ourselves, monitor your physical health and that of your loved ones. So if it's a sense of eating appropriately or eating healthily, drink plenty of water, get enough rest. People, again, when you understand how things are affecting you, some person may be sleeping too much or too little.
Mm. All right.
So
I'm seeing some comments jumping up online. So I want to engage our people who are watching in or tuning in rather. We have Charlene Riley who's saying, thank you, Charlene. Thank you for your comment. She's saying, try seeing this enforced time together as a time to get to know those who we call family. How do you react to that?
ultimately, it's a positive thing. Again, your attitude and your perspective. So I'm locked in. Can't go anywhere, and especially for communities that are now under quarantine for a specific period of time. Spending the time to get to know individuals. There are a lot of family members who are discovering talents and getting to know each other because previously, sunrise, they're out. Sunset, they're in and they put their heads down, they're asleep. Limited time for family get togetherness. Talk about family cohesion, the absence thereof. But now COVID has caused the family to be spending much more time together. Certainly there's going to be on the continuum from one end to the next. And from the positive end, we're looking at reassurance, spending time, especially for parents. If you're into loving your children, you realize if you have toddlers, they grow so fast. I've spent much more time with my 2-year-old in the last, truth be told, 7 months than I probably would have in their entire life, just being around it because of the quarantine and spending more time at home, seeing our development, seeing our walking, seeing our growth in our language being much clearer. That I don't take for granted. So if it is that for parents who have the awesome responsibility to nurture a child or guardians or a family member, you have that young one spend that time with the family member. So that I certainly support that view or that post, how it is that we can use this time more with our families. Again, as I said, it's a continuum. You might say, okay, I'm spending more time. So there's going to be an increase in the conflicts. There's going to be an increase in disagreements.
Right, you're gonna
There's
spend
going to
your
be a
in
rush
close
on the
time together
phone.
is what as in the same and come live with me are two different things. You might rediscover the things you never like about your spouse or your partner, your children, whatever. You know what I mean? Some of those things are something you have to contend with.
So that's the flip side of it. But at the end of it, your perspective, as you seek to grow, and understand that in this life, you're not going to always have things 100%. It's a work in progress, a work in progress.
All right, so
So
let me ask you. Now, for our children, having fun, talking about children, it could be impacting them in much more major ways, or it could just be taking a toll on them and us not necessarily paying attention to it because we might not be able to readily recognize the signs. So when it comes to our children, what are some of the things that we could be looking out for to say, okay, maybe this is having a bigger impact on my child than I actually thought it was?
I'm happy we're taking the time out to look at children. From the Jamaica Red Cross, there is much focus and attention placed to children and other vulnerable groups. We must make it quite clear that there are segments of our population that oftentimes during emergencies, pandemics, that they can be overlooked if you're not careful. And children are a category of the vulnerable population that we ought to always spend time to look at. They are different, they are at a different developmental stage and understanding and processing. And so it is that you will find children, they respond again to stress quite different from an adult. We have two general categories in mental health in terms of understanding children issues. They can either internalize what is happening or externalize it or showcase behaviors that are external. So they may become disruptive. They may be talking a lot. They may be eating a lot during this time because school has been closed from March or in some other areas later or might be earlier. They have not been seeing their friends. They've not been able to play after school or have that in-classroom exchange. And that is important for our children. We cannot underestimate the value of play, collective play as well as individual play amongst our children. So we look to see if our children are sleeping too much or sleeping too little, if they verbalize that they are feeling worried or they are concerned of their own family member. We must pay attention to that for our children. So again, they experience stress related to COVID and issues much differently than adults do. How can we help our children? The question, the follow-up to that is to be attentive to their needs, have a sense of scheduling, have a structure as far as possible. We're now coming out of this summer operation or summer season here on the island or within the Caribbean. So you want to kind of create a new normal, a back to school approach for those who may, it's a different season wherever you're at and you're tuning in. The bottom line, create a schedule that helps with our children. So if it is that it's homework or if it's some schoolwork, there's a focus on homeschooling now, greater appreciation for teaching your own at your own pace within your most familiar space, which is your home, ideally. So appreciate that. Take them outside, nature. Some persons do have the luxury or the benefit or the blessing, whatever you want to term it, of yard space or land space where you can go outside for a little walk. You see some greenery around you. Some persons are, their living conditions does not allow for that because it's more of a concrete kind of a jungle or setup, or it might be an apartment. So you don't have that, you know, the balcony is very small. So you have to be sensitive to your reality. But again, some people might have a park close to the apartments. In Jamaica, we might not necessarily have that as a common feature, but elsewhere in the world, you do have parks. Some may be closed as a public space. Again, you have to be cognizant of what the requirements are, stipulations at the local government level in your jurisdiction, so to speak.
All right, so yeah, we have a question or a comment online. Marinda Ruddock, thank you, Marinda. Really appreciate your comment. She says, my concern is just a lack of personal responsibility with regards to wearing masks and physical distancing of persons in the public space. It raises a good point in the sense that you become anxious or agitated because of the actions of other people. And so that might be, you know, you might be developing this anxiety because you might be a control freak, and the fact that you can't control your environment in that regard, it can be a stressor for you and giving you that the anxiety and so on that you have to deal with. So how do people manage that kind of situation?
That's a powerful one, and I take my glasses off for that one because it brings us to the notion of each of us are our brother's keeper. From a Christian personal view of mine, you know, each of us are our brother's keepers. And so that personal responsibility in stopping or stemming the spread of the virus goes back to basic procedures that the scientists, the health professionals have told us. It does work. Wash your hands, cover your mouth, cover your nose, sanitization. So at the personal, at that micro level, we must be responsible adults. We must take care or be cognizant of the vulnerable groups again, or elderly, yes, or children, those with what we say are pre-existing medical issues that now predisposes them to be affected in a negative way if it is that they contract the virus. So personal responsibility, wear your mask, wash your hands. It is frustrating when you go on the streets or you go out to do your business, and you, especially if you have to take public transport and you're in the vehicle, or you're on the train, or you're in the plane, and you're wearing your mask, yes, but the person beside you isn't. That's frustrating, and you probably want to knock them on the head over, and we say, no, we don't want no violence, we don't want no aggression, because that's going to lead to another fist fight, and you might get use more than you can. But we can simply say, to be led to reach out and say, sir, it would be nice if you wear your mask. Help to protect me and you by wearing your mask. Help to protect our frontline workers or health personnel. They have their own families. And when you don't and end up going to the hospital and have to deal with them, and then they leave the hospital and probably introduce the virus to their own family. So that web goes far when you realize that your own actions has large impact on society. Again, one of the issues surrounding the pandemic goes back to and how they're managing it, really. They call it contact tracing, and that's a new terminology that many of us have been schooled in public health, so like
Right.
overnight. And
Right.
contact
Right.
tracing is such a simple process, but when you look at that process to see the larger impact, you take that vehicle to move from point A to point B. How many persons sat with you in that vehicle? When they disperse, say you sat amongst 3 persons, that one person went to the market that now interacts with about another 10 or 4 persons. Then one went to the supermarket that interacts with another 10 or 12 persons. And it begins to spiral, so to speak. So when it can get a little difficult to really connect all the dots, but don't
Yeah.
underestimate the role that you play. And I hope I'm driving home the point that contact tracing, that each of us, when we look at our networks and I know it expands, it's just phenomenal. So please, let's all play our part.
Kevin Campbell online, he's referencing something that you mentioned earlier about being able to make that shift, that mental shift from the, I guess, the fear phase to the learning phase. Kevin Campbell says, for this to work, one has to change their attitude towards what might be seen as a problem. It is a good practice. Change the way you have been looking at the situation, and this will change your attitude towards it. So I guess it's just reinforcing that. And it's always good to repeat these things, as you mentioned earlier. Sometimes it's just a matter of shifting your perspective. Initially, you might be thinking, oh my God, problem, virus, can't go outside, lockdown, problem. You can switch it and think about being able to spend time with your family, getting to know the people around you, spending more time, just getting into yourself, what your likes are, your habits, and what things drive you, and being able to focus on how you can move forward personally because of what the pandemic is forcing you to now do and forcing you to now look at the world. I guess I just wanted to repeat that because it's always good advice to let persons understand the power of the
You said
shifting
it
mindset.
perfectly.
Now,
Absolutely. I love how the way
one of
you
the
just
things, one of the things that persons might be feeling, especially if you are an essential worker, somebody who has to go out there, somebody who, when everybody else is locked down in their house, the nurses, the police, the contact tracers, the persons with the public health departments, et cetera, et cetera. How do you tell them to be, because I mean, even as much as they understand the nature of the work they do, I don't think anybody could have been reasonably prepared for the shift that COVID-19 has caused in the world today. So you have to be working under these new circumstances, social distances, masks, etc., etc. And then on top of that, you're fearful of your own personal well-being and that of your family and so on, but you still have to be the one who gets up, answers the call, and goes out there to just do work on behalf of your fellow man. So what do you tell to those persons who may or may not be understanding that they are feeling or they are dealing with COVID-19 related stress?
again, similar to the common fears that all of us as general public individuals are just human beings with experience. We don't expect anything less from our frontline workers. In fact, I take off my hat to those individuals and big them up and say, we love what you do. We appreciate you. So from a managerial standpoint, while I might not necessarily have immediate contact with frontline workers, but I say where managers, supervisors can affirm their frontline workers, let them know that they are not alone, have those support groups. But, from one end, I know in Jamaica, the Psychological Society, along with even the Red Cross, have that support system for our frontline workers that they, again, in mental health, everyone, this is the psychologist needs his own psychologists. Yes. So we do
Exactly.
provide
Yeah.
support for our frontline workers through the Jamaica Red Cross. There is a contact line that they can reach out and get. So we affirm our frontline workers. We state in so many words, we appreciate and love you, and to acknowledge that they too may have similar fears as the general public, and to work with them through those. In fact, we have seen across the globe where frontline workers or people in the health arena have just quit because the stress has been too much for them. One of the particular occurrence that I sat and I observed and I appreciate, and this took place somewhere in Europe, in England, where the general public came out on their balconies when the quarantine was up and about, and they applauded the frontline workers there were cheers. So to my knowledge, it was like at a particular time of the day, everybody come out and say, thumbs up, clap you.
Right,
And when
right.
the frontline workers, I would have imagined, saw that appeal from the public to say that somebody out there like what I'm doing, somebody out there respect what I'm doing. And then it goes back to the personal individual level. If I wear my mask, if I wash my hands, if I'm not feeling well, then turn on my yard or I stay at home. I'm also showing that I respect my frontline workers. So that's one way we can affirm and reassure the frontline workers, albeit health, albeit the fire, personnel or fire sector, albeit the we say police, military. We appreciate them because our frontline workers go beyond health. There are a number of stakeholders involved in this fight against COVID-19.
Now, another area in preparation for this interview, one of the things I came across is that many of us, you might see a friend going through a tough time and you want to help. You know what I mean? You might want to just go over and extend a hand, but there are good ways and then there are bad ways to help. You know what I mean? One of which is, some people have a way of making things about them. So for example, the person might say, boy, rough dealing with this thing because my child is having this kind of problem. And the first thing the person does is start telling you about their child without even actually acknowledging what you are going through. So I want to just list through some of the ways persons can appreciate that there are good ways to help and there's not so good ways to help, so that they can, if they really want to reach out and make a connection with somebody who might be having a rough go of it, how can they proceed in a good and positive way?
Look here, one of the simple tools that all of us can do is a technique in mental health. And I'll share that common knowledge. You can read it up. Active listening. Active listening. Someone comes to share something with you, keep your mouth quiet. Don't say a thing. Just be attentive in your look to the person. You might want to lean forward. You might want to shake your head and say, or tell me more. We call that encouragers in trying to facilitate the conversation, to move the conversation along. So in other words, listen without interjecting. That's one of the good ways to just have a person share, because many times, you can't fix the person's problem. You can't change your reality. You just want to ensure the person wants somebody to listen to them. So through listening, a good tool or tip is to validate the individual, validate their concerns by saying, thank you for sharing that with me. That sounds to be really difficult. That must be rough. Full stop. That's a way of validating the individual. And the person might say, thank you. You seem to understand what I'm talking about. Although you might not necessarily need to fully understand, but the person's perception that you understand helps them to even feel a little lighter. It puts them in a position where that mind shift can take place, that mental shift. So that's what you want to do. Listen, use encouragers such as a nod. We call that nonverbal. We might say, tell me more, simple put. You might, again, just to validate, to say, I understand, I sense that you're going through a difficult time. One of the things that you probably don't want to do is to run to say, I understand where I go through, man. I understand what is it that you're experiencing. Because two stresses present to both persons, but they individually respond differently. So you can say, it sounds to be difficult, but don't quick to say, I understand, because I am going through the exact thing. You could say, I might be sensing what you're going through now because it sounds like a similar situation, but don't be quick to offer your situation into the conversation. Allow the individual to express themselves. Again, as you say, don't be too quick to say the same thing happened to me, or come out tight, man. You should shake out tight, man. You're bigger and better than that, man. Pull up yourself.
Just dismissive and just be like, no, man, I'm not. Yes, you're good, man. I go bounce back, man. I look at thing that, man. You know what I mean? We make light of each other's mental health issues or problems. Right,
Absolutely.
right. Now, when would you, what would be some of the indicators for a person who you might be doing a little bit of self-reflection, or you might just, you might just be in a position where you realize, okay, maybe I need to actually go see someone or talk to somebody. If I'm going through and I'm just living my life day to day, but then, what are some indicators I should look for as just a regular person who might not necessarily be trained and understand these things, that that lets me know that this is a red flag, I think it's time for me to go and see someone or talk to somebody professional about what I'm going through.
All right, we're going to keep it simple. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little, wanting to self-medicate. And by virtue of self-medicate, you want to use substances and psychoactive substances in the technical realm, but it's simply put, you feel like drinking alcohol or some alcoholic beverages, or you feel like consuming some caffeinated beverage because it soothes, it numbs the reality for the moment. So if you're drinking too much, and especially if you're drinking an operating machine, is operating a motor vehicle, where you put yourself at risk, you want to cause a concern. There are persons who may be thinking that, this is just unbearable. Enough is enough. Suicidal thoughts may cross your path or cross their minds. Then talk to someone. Don't take that for granted. Talk to someone. Someone might have too much interest in sex or little interest in sex. That's an area too. Talk to someone as to what's happening about your own life. Again, so that suicide, drinking too much, having interest in just smoking, or again drinking alcohol, caffeinated beverage, taking medication, painkillers. People oftentimes use that as a way of self-medicating, or any substance. By and large, you find that someone might be crying too much or easily irritated. They might literally tell you, boy, I'm depressed. I'm feeling depressed. They can't pull themselves out of the bed. There's no motivation to do nada, to do nothing. They just don't want to see the light of today. If you're at that point, reach out to the Jamaica Red Cross again, to the Ministry of Health and Wellness. There are provision, there are support that you can get to help you.
And in terms of a lot of persons, the stigma, Doc. You know how people react whenever they feel like, boy, I have to go and see somebody. You know what I mean? So I think I'd like you to allay some of the fears that people might have by just sharing a little bit of how the treatments themselves work out. When you go and see somebody, what can you expect to experience when you go and see somebody like yourself and start engaging in that developmental conversation to move towards better mental health and just overcoming any challenges that you might be facing? Let persons feel like, okay, this is not that big a deal. You can go and see somebody, talk to somebody, and get some help. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Consider it as, I'm going to see my physical doctor. I need to check my blood pressure. I feel like my heart beating a little faster than it should, and I'm not sleeping as good as I should. I'm worrying about things as I should. Let me go talk with my counselor. Let me go and see my psychologist, Wynter. When you come to see Wynter or any other psychologist, they're going to welcome you with open arms to say, I am pleased and honored that you see it important to come and share with me at this time. So we say in mental health, unconditional positive regard. There is no bias, no judgment that is going to be cast to come by virtue of come and seeing a counselor, a mental health professional, a social worker, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. Those are some common professionals that are trained to help you. So they welcome you in a sense that non-judgmental frame of reference. You come, you sit, engage. We talk about what is happening with you. We look at your successes that you've had in life. We do positive asset search. We want to reaffirm and share the good things that are happening with you that you're telling us about, that we want to go, if at all possible, we go tell it to the world. You can show in terms of your positive traits that are happening with you. But when I say tell it to the world, it's absolutely as if we want to just broadcast the good things about our clients. But you can rest assured that confidentiality is paramount to the helping professional. What you say to us stays with us in the context. There's no need to worry that we're going to tell or Tim, Dick, or Harry, or some other family members of yours, depending on the associations or how the connection goes. But no, confidentiality is paramount to the helping professional. So we can rest assured that many times individuals would not want to talk to their church pastor because it's the same person they're going to see Sunday, Saturday, or Wednesday, or Friday. So they may feel better to come and talk to Jason Wynter because you're only going to see Jason Wynter when you go to see Jason Wynter.
Exactly.
And that helps if that's your perspective or your feeling or your view, that when you do come to see Jason Wynter, only you and Jason Wynter will know about what you say. Except though, if you do plan that we see where it would need to get additional help with consultation, especially when it involves suicidal ideations, we must inform the necessary authorities. But the bottom line is that it's a confidential exchange. It's an exchange in which you are supported. We brainstorm better ways. We brainstorm ways to get you moving from point A to point B. Because just as with physical health, there's great importance on mental health. And greater is that notion that you're in your right frame of mind to process, to think, to understand, and ultimately to give of your best. To give of your best. So there's that exchange. Sometimes when you come to see a counselor, you might just need one session. And a session
yeah, that's
can
funny
run
enough. I think many people
45
think they
for
might need
1 hour.
50 sessions. Some people think they might need 10, 20, 30 sessions. That's why they're afraid to make that first step.
Not at all. It might just be one session. It might be 2, it might be 3, but depending on the issues that bring the person in. Because again, COVID can bring to the fore trauma issues. There are a lot of persons who experience trauma. They might be victimized. They might have been victimized, and they're in this lockdown in the community. You see their perpetrator more often than not, and so thoughts being rehashed. And so when you go into therapy because of childhood and you have not dealt with this thing, you might need more than a session. And your counselor, psychologist, your social worker, whichever mental health professional, will so humbly guide you to the individual who can be of greater support and service to you.
Let me quickly just show some love to Highs Fifi. I hope I'm pronouncing that Highs Fifi, HYZFEFE, who's just basically bigging you up and just saying she loves the professional help. She's on Instagram. She's saying that she talks about the strengths-based perspective and just basically I'm just appreciating what you're talking about, that the strictly professional, and just appreciating what we're talking about and just giving you kudos for the work that you're doing. Tracy and Bless, thank you, Tracy, and she's asking what the conversation is about. Well, Tracy, we're talking about dealing with COVID-19 stress, providing some tips to help you be able to navigate this difficult time, this difficult. I just little stress are the usual thing, but no, there are many persons who are having a real rough go of it, and they don't necessarily know where to go, what to do. Hopefully this program provides some strategies, and if necessary, the kind of impetus for you to go out and speak to somebody, get the help that you really, really need. And this is why Dr. Wynter is here. He's been going through a list of different indicators to look out for as to why you may just be having a problem. Like he said, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, eating too much, not eating enough, finding all kind of different ways to cope, which are not necessarily healthy, maybe drinking too much, smoking too much, having an unhealthy sexual appetite in one way or the other, maybe having too much, not enough, that kind of thing. So these are some of the things that you have to look out for, and hopefully that gets you, hopefully this information is something you can share with a friend, share with somebody else, and hopefully help us navigate the situation, because we all kind of need each other in a time like this. We have to we have to come together even as we stay socially distant and not necessarily get too close together. So Dr. Wynter, I'm really glad. I mean, this has been a very eye-opening conversation, because we really learned a lot about how the whole psychological approach to helping persons address their problem. As you mentioned, it's like going to see a physical doctor or doing a workout or doing a checkup. Don't forget your mental health and your mental development, right? So I want you to share with persons some of the different resources, again, that they can go if they're having a difficult time, or they know somebody's having a difficult time. What are some of the areas, again, that they can go to get some help?
All right, I must say that individuals can reach out to their local branch for the Jamaica Red Cross. Here, it is a voluntary-based organization, and they do provide that support that they can get help. In fact, you call the Jamaica Red Cross and they can dispatch, get a counselor close to you, a mental health professional who is willing to talk with you, to provide that guidance. All right, so that's important for you to be mindful of. You can also reach out to the mental health clinic or the guidance. Well, what we have is community clinics, and within our community clinics across the island of Jamaica, there is a mental health child and adolescent, as well as the adult clinics that you can get support from. You can also get support from the various counseling and psychological service centers available. I know I'm not just speaking to a Jamaican audience. So what you'll find is in your respective countries, your psychological society, your group of psychologists, they have, by and large, for example, you have the Jamaica Psychological Society. If you're listening from Barbados or from the Bahamas or any of the Caribbean island or countries, there is that group of psychologists that they form an association. So you can go on the web page. In those respective associations, they may have listing of their psychologists, licensed psychologists who can provide support. So from that global standpoint where you can get help, help is there. From a religious standpoint to, again, throughout our local churches across the globe, there are trained mental health professionals in your church. So you can talk with your local pastor or your local church leader who can make a linkage to where you can get that additional support from. All right. So that's one area that I would definitely encourage individuals to check and examine.
Quickly again on Instagram, Hi's Fifi, her name is actually Fiona, says she's a social worker and she's showing love to you, who was her past lecturer from NCU, and she says you taught her very well. So we go give yourself a pat on the back for that one. You have a student who's showing you some real appreciation for the input that you gave her. I love the internet because I just did a quick search. It's the Jamaica Red Cross. Is it that the head office or the headquarters is in Central Village, St. Catherine?
Central Village, St. Catherine. And I'll just quickly share with you the contact number, the helpline for the psychosocial support for the Jamaica Red Cross, with head office in Central Village, St. Catherine, Jamaica, and also local branches throughout the island. And in fact, many of the other Caribbean countries do have their local Red Cross branch. But here in Jamaica, you can call a helpline at 876-325-4091. That's 876-325-4091. That's a helpline for the Jamaica Red Cross Psychosocial Support Unit.
All right, fantastic. So persons, you can get the help that you need. This has been a really valuable conversation, and I only hope that, if it's even one person we are able to provide some kind of useful information to, and they're able to make that they're able to understand what they're feeling, and hopefully start making steps towards improving their overall mental health. Yeah, we will have done our job today, and I'm glad. Well, let me just take a quick pin there. Dr. Wynter, suppose somebody hears you and decide, boy, I like how Dr. Wynter stay. Him sound like him, him sound like him probably would understand me a little bit better than most people. So suppose people want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out to you and make a connection with you?
All right, I do make myself available for persons to reach out. They can call me via this contact number. That's 876-843-4132. That is 876-843-4132. I do provide psychotherapy via teletherapy. So I make myself available to reach out and to support anyone who needs that kind of support. You can also reach out to me via email at dr_Wynter, and that's Wynter with a Y. So that's dr_Wynter@yahoo.com. So you can make contact with me on those two platforms. I'm also available on Facebook, so you can search my name on Facebook and send me a message. We can also connect via that platform.
All right, I think I'm going to leave it there. I think we've covered a lot of things, and we hope that persons will be able to go back through if necessary, get the information they need. We've talked about a wide range of things, particularly what signs to look for if you think you might be having a rough go, signs to look for in our children, which is just as important, ways in which essential workers might be able to, strategies that they can be able to use to cope. And most importantly, try to appreciate the importance of shifting your mindset. Yes, COVID has come with a lot of problems. It's provided a whole range of issues and challenges that we have to grapple with. But if you are able to just switch your mind, flip your mind a little bit, there are some silver linings there that you can identify, and you can use those as a springboard to kind of push you in a more positive direction and maybe help you to overcome any of these stresses and so on that you might be dealing with. It's all about perspective, right, Doc?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Opportunity, as I once was taught, is Nowhere. Now here. Opportunity is now here. You split that word that says nowhere and put it that it is now here. So make it work. Spin that wheel. Say, take it on turn fashion, make it work for you.
All right, so I think on that note, it's time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. Really appreciate those. And if you have a question and you haven't sent it in yet, go ahead. We'll be going back through afterwards and we'll be able to hopefully provide you with the answers you need, and if necessary, be able to link you up with Dr. Wynter or somebody like him who might be able to answer any or address any concerns that you might have. You know what I mean? Because we definitely want to be able to provide useful information and benefit to those who are watching the program, right? Now, remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. If there's anyone in particular you'd like us to have in studio, let us know. We'll try to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service. You'll find us there. We're everywhere. See, we're not hard to find, right? We do this every week live on Facebook and Instagram and Zoom, absolutely, because of COVID. It's that kind of situation. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us. Please have a wonderful day.